Hey guys, Pretzelman945 here, and welcome to what is very likely going to be a extremely long video because I finally finished Berserk. Um, and it is now my new number one favorite work of fiction of all time. I have a list of talking points, which I don't do very often. If you're a frequent viewer of this channel, you know I do not do this very often, but this is a special case. Um, I think the last time I did this was either with Legend of the Galactic Heroes or Hannibal, and either way, it's been months since I have done this. So, um, we're just going to jump right in. The first talking point I have is Rickard. And what I specifically want to talk about with Rickard is the way that he uh evolves throughout the remainder of the story past the Golden Age arc, because I did reread the entire story from volume 1 um up to where I had not um gone past previously, and I finished the entire thing. And I mean, Rickard, before, I'm not going to say like too much generally on characters like before where I had not read before. If it's a character I have not talked about, which there are a few of those in here. Um, but Rickard, what I love about him is the way that he represent like from the beginning of the story, he represents like this idea in the world of Berserk of like innocence and untainted hope and stuff like that. Um, and eventually he learns what happened during the eclipse because Guts tells him. Um, but he still decides to meet Griffith again, and that meeting, that panel, is one of my favorite in the entire series. Um, and um, um, and then like the fact that he ends up joining the Kusan and kind of journeying on his own, I just find really interesting because like Rickard, I think is just a great character because of the way that he manages to somehow keep a hope for himself that he doesn't lose, and like sort of just transform it into a different like objective or way of looking at the world, and I really like that about his character. um the next character I want to bring up, which will definitely be like, these are ordered in terms of like what I think I would talk about more than others. But we'll see if that actually ends up panning out. um so the second character that I want to bring up is Silat, who is the head of the Baki Raka. And the reason why I want to bring him up is because I think that, he starts out obviously badly losing to Guts in the Golden Age arc. And then he makes reappearances. First, like he swears loyalty to Ganishka, um, who I could have talked about, but I kind of decided not to. Uh um It's because, like, I don't know. I don't think he was that significant enough to warrant an entire talking point in himself. Um, uh, And Silent I find to be an interesting character just because of the fact that he is this um he is sort of like I find characters that are just like semi-neutral, constantly like observing what happens around them and like changing loyalties multiple times. They're very interesting characters. And that's exactly what Silat is to me, and I think he just has a very interesting relationship with Guts in the story and also just perspective on the world as it changes because of how many like different places that he ends up going to. Um, and another example of this is Daiba, who I would not have given a talking point if I was still around volume 33 or 34, because that in that point he is just like a servant to Ganishka and not nearly as interesting of a character. But that's not what happens. He actually has a very interesting relationship with Rickert, uh, and it's like obvious that the old man is Daibo right away. Um, which is the point, I suspect. And it's just a great example of dramatic irony, which is one of my favorite storytelling tropes. Um, and Daiba, for similar reasons to Silat, I just find him interesting because, like, he is this wizard character who ends up traveling alongside Rickert, and I think that, like, the combination of the two and this combined with seeing more of Kukan like city and society in the very new Eastern Exile chapter. I find that very interesting. Um, the fourth stalking point is where we get into extreme Yap territory, and we're only going to get longer from here because the next character I want to talk about is Kirke. Um, Kirke is an absolutely fantastic character. Um, introduction and subsequently introducing like the world of magic. I'm going to talk about the world building in general um later on, but the fact that like her character introduces the world of magic her and like her character struggles with like identifying her role in the group and like how she slowly becomes bonded to Aska and in particular Farmeets and is teaching her like the ways of magic and at the same time developing a fantastically unique relationship to Guts as he um helps him in the berserker armor, which I will talk a lot about when I get to Guts himself. Um I just find like all of that absolutely fantastic. And Pierre is just a character that is just consistently awesome. Um, and speaking of how she teaches Farnese, Farnese is the next talking point that I have. Because I already talked a lot about her in my recent video where I updated my favorite female characters in fiction, where Farnese was number 7. Um, and given the circumstances that I finished the story, I mean, I'm going to look at the list right now, mid video, and give you an update on this. Um, I think that Farnese, hmm, this is tricky. This is like my first time thinking about this, actually. Um, Moves to number 5. Yeah. Freerin and Mau Mau surpass either one of them. No. not no not no. I think what I'm going to do is move Far East to number 5. Um, and the things that I said about Far East in the video all still apply, except I love how much what I'm going to add on to that is I love how much she grows into becoming a mage, and she actually is a proper mage now, which is like her getting the mage clothes was just an awesome moment because that to me was just like the true full circle moment of her having completely changed as a character, and I think everything about her character is absolutely excellent. Um, the next talking point I have is Elfhelm and the Corridor of Dreams. Um, Elfhelm is like probably the singular most beautiful location in all of Berserk. Um, there are so many absolutely gorgeous panels of the scenery, and there is so much just fascinating lore to that entire island. And the concept of the Corridor of Dreams is fucking genius. Um, and the way that Farnice and Kierke have to traverse through Casca's memories, where in like every single panel in the Corridor of Dreams, there is just like such intense and deep symbolism in like every panel that you can see. There is this symbolism for a different thing that's related to Casca's memories, um and like the fact that they recover her memories is so satisfying. And just I love the concept of the Corridor of Dreams so much. It is like that sequence of chapters or 2 volumes where they're in the Corridor of Dreams is like one of my favorite parts of the story, easily. Like volumes 40 and 41, like all most of 40 and a good part of 41 as well, where they're actually in the Corridor of Dreams. Masterpiece material right there. Um, and my next talking point after that is Casca herself. Um, I loved Casca during the Golden Age arc, but I'm not going to repeat the same points as that. Um, the trauma that she goes through during the eclipse, like, I think the best part of Casca's character and development is being able to see all of that, like, fully illustrated in the Corridor of Dreams because there are just so many incredible panels, so much like deep symbolism in every part of her memories being rescued, and I think the concept that um he is that she has recovered her memories now was just it's such an awesome moment. Um, but then she gets stolen away by Griffith again. Uh, after one of the most ridiculous revelations in the entire series, which I will talk about when I get to Griffith's character. That's near the end, though. Um, and um, um, was I talking about? I lost my train of thought for a second. Fuck. Yes, for being taken away. What I love about this is that, like, She was so shocked at seeing Griffith that she like almost reverted back to her trauma again. But like there is still it's not like her memory is shattered all over again. Like her um her there is still a part of her conscience that is like fighting back. And I'm so curious to see where that goes. The next talking point I have is on my absolute favorite side character in the entire series, and I swear I am probably the biggest Skeleton Knight fan ever, because that's who this character's next talking point about is Skeleton Knight. Skeleton Knight is my favorite side character and my third favorite character in Berserk, only behind Guts and Griffith. Um, he is like one of the coolest, most badass characters I have ever seen in all of fiction. And he is so consistently fun. There are so many moments where he just shows up and does insanely clutch shit. Um, and it is hype every single time. Not once does it feel like this is the incredible thing about his character. Not once does it ever feel like a plot contrivance or an overly convenient thing, him doing so. Because his role in the story is much deeper than that. Because he is like this extremely interesting and unique parallel to Guts in the way that he is a character that, as we see when Guts learns of the history of the Berserker arm, which used to belong to Skeleton Knight, um, he also like experienced the eclipse and lost his true love at the time, which was Flora, which was kind of crazy, the fact that they were more than just old friends, although it kind of makes sense in my mind. But um like his sort of interconnected nature through every part of the story and how he represents that theme of causality and how he is a parallel to Guts who is fighting against that um is just incredible. I love Skeleton Knight so much as a character. He is so fucking awesome. Um, at number or talking point nine, I should say, is the entirety of Volume 34. Uh, and I'm also going to bridge into a much bigger discussion about the world of Berserk in general. So I want to start off by saying that um before I had begun my reread, Berserk has like the best indirect world building in fiction, and I held that opinion uh even though I'd only read like halfway through the story, and this opinion is only further solidified, and in fact, like it is moved up so much higher on my favorite worlds in fiction list, which I didn't do an updated video on, but I updated that list a while ago myself, and I think like based on what I remember about that list, I think that Berserk at this point would probably go at number 3. At number 3, I think. Only behind Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, because yes, it would even overtake One Piece in world building for me. Um, because, and I'm going to talk about volume 34 now. Volume 34 is my favorite volume in all Berserk besides 12 and 13, which are the Eclipse. And the reason for that is because in a very similar fashion to um the Eclipse volumes, volume 34 completely hinges everything about the nature of Berserk's world at its core. And the fact that such a fundamental shift is able to happen is just absolutely unbelievable. Um, it's Griffith had been building up all this power, and he ends up fighting Ganishka's like absolutely gigantic fucking form, which is just like uh probably the craziest thing in all of Berserk because it is just so unbelievably huge that like even compared to everything else in Berserk where like scale is the best thing that Berserk does in terms of portraying things in its world. Uh that thing is just so massive, like beyond belief. It is the most insane thing that is portrayed in all of Berserk, in my opinion. Uh, because it is just like as ridiculous as inhuman concepts can possibly be in this story, as far as I'm concerned. Um, and Griffith just defeats him. Like he just flies in on Zod, um, who I realistically should have made a separate talking point for, but I'm not going to because I don't want to now. But I will just say this: Zod is a fantastic secondary antagonist. I love his rivalry with the Skeleton Knight. I love his relationship with Guts in regards to causality and how he is loyal to Griffith. I find that great. Okay, Zod will tangent aside. Griffith flies in on Zod, and in one of the most insane parts of this story, which I think has to be one of my favorite moments in all of Berserk for sure. Um, Skeleton Knight just appears out of nowhere and tries to attack Griffith with his sword of actuation, which is like this sword that is made of metallets, and it's the coolest sword in all of fiction, bar none. But like Skeleton Knight tries to attack Griffith, and then Griffith literally manipulates the sword around his shoulder and has it pierce Ganithka, and this completely like changes the world because it creates the concept of Fantasia, which is the land of man's desire, where things like elves and other kinds of like magic creatures and just the general concept of magic is suddenly in the forefront and it exists. And I genuinely do not think I can say that I have seen a more fundamental change to any story's world in any story I have ever consumed. And that revelation is just ridiculous. The entire volume is ridiculous, but like that moment in that revelation single handedly changes everything about the world of Berserk fundamentally, and I do mean as fundamentally as I can mean the word fundamentally when I say that. Um, and just in general, like the entire world of Berserk is just fucking genius storytelling. It is just genius storytelling. It is genius world building, and I love it. It is one of my favorite aspects of the story, of which there are a gazillion. Um, Next talking point is gut. Um, oh my God. Okay. So this is going to be an exception because I am going to talk about my opinions on Guts from the very beginning of the story, just because rereading it gave me a much bigger appreciation for Guts across the entirety of the story. So, um, what I love from the beginning of the story is like just how rough around the edges he is, and how like just completely bleak his outlook on the world is, and then we see like his past in the golden age and like what an amazing character he is. And I completely forgot, like, both when I initially read the first 19 volumes in 2023 and when I reread the first like 14 when I had bought them at the beginning of last year. I had completely forgotten about his Campfire of Dreams moment, which is easily my second favorite in the entire series. Um, it is such a fucking incredible and powerful moment that is referenced so many times, and I would argue is like the most important moment for Guts' character in the entire story. Um, because it is such a brilliant definition of his relationship to Griffith. Um, and Guts, like when he meets Puck, um, after they've been traveling together for a while, what I find so interesting about what happens to Guts is the way that Puck actually does soften him up, and I really, really like that. The way that it's just this very slow but um gradual and extremely noticeable change in his character. Um, uh, and then, of course, we get to, um, the conviction arc where I love, uh, Guts' relationship with Farnese in the beginning because of what he ends up representing to her and how that fundamentally changes her as a character, as I've already discussed. Um, but like his attempt in the conviction arc to like defy causality by ensuring that he can save Pasca, um are just amazing. Like he has so many amazing moments in the conviction arc. Um and then as Farnese and Serpico and Isidra, like and eventually when they meet Cherke, like they gain a pretty big group of companions. And like my favorite part of reading like seeing Guts go along in the story and seeing his development is related to how having companions again affects him, because it like mellows him out again, and it sort of returns him to part of the man that he once was. And I just find that to be such a powerful thing. And in particular, there's this one panel where it's like the only text says companions, and it's just like a shot of like all of his friends from the old band of the Hawk. And that is just a brilliant panel. I love that one. Um, and it's the first thing I think of. It's one of the first ones I think of when I think of like Gupta's character. Um, and Um, and of course, the next thing majorly related to Guts' character that I need to talk about is the Berserker armor because um I fucking love the Berserker armor. I think that it is a brilliant plot device, and it is like um one of my favorite like power up I've ever seen, I think. It is so cool and it is so insanely awesome, and yet the incredible thing about the Berserker armor as a plot device is it creates this incredible balance of like different of like drastically different emotions within the reader where on one hand, you feel incredibly hyped and just pumped up whenever it appears because you know that the Berserker armor is going to be used to absolutely destroy um like whatever enemy he's encountering. But on the other hand, there is this sense of like dread, depression, horror. You can use many different words to describe the feeling that you get when you see it appear because there's this constant like worry that it is going to completely take over Guts' mind due to the fact that like the Berserker armor acts as like this infinite amplifier to his internal rage, um, which is constantly represented by this crazy dog thing. Um, and the way that the berserker armor like causes it to elevate that, it means that there is this constant worry whenever he ends up consumed by the berserker armor that it will overtake him and something bad will happen, like him attacking his companions, which thankfully doesn't happen. But the fact that like the berserker armor is such a plot device that it is able to create such an extreme dichotomy of emotions at all times when it shows up is just absolutely brilliant. Okay, I had to go get some water because I was getting thirsty. And I think I just finished talking about the Berserker armor, so we're moving on from there. Um, and I really think the next major point for Guts' character that I want to talk about um comes as um he comes when the revelation that um and I want to talk about this more when we get to Griffith's character, which is the next talking point. Um like the fact that uh hmm, um the fact that uh Griffith was in the form of the child all along. Um, that is like the most insane story with in all Berserk. Probably tied with the way that the world changes in Volume 34. And the effect that this has on Guts, like the reignition of his fear blind rage was just crazy to see. And him relentlessly attacking Griffith just nonstop was like, in a way, depressing because it felt like he was regressing as a character and not like in a negative sense in terms of like bad writing or anything, but like, you know, tragically his character was regressing, and it got so bad to the point where like he was even questioning his like trust in his own sword, and to the point where he just basically becomes numb for several chapters. And then of course when he's in the Kusan tomb, there's this incredible sequence of panels um where he like is reflecting on his entire life in that weird shell thing, which I'm not really even exactly sure what that is, but I don't think it's a big deal. Um, and um, um, and like the revelation that he is like this interstice, and that is what makes him equal to Griffith was absolutely just brilliant. I loved that. I don't know what is the thing right here. Oh, it's the corbin bit. That's what it is. Okay, anyway, that was completely close. That's everything I have to say on Guts. He is definitely back in my top 20 characters in fiction, although I would need to update that list to determine where. Um, and I might make a updated video on that, but I don't know when that would be. Um, Griffith is another character that moved up. He moved up to my number four in my favorite characters in fiction. When he was number five, he moved above Hannibal. Mainly because of the revelation that I was just previously talking about, which is just fucking genius. Like, truly. It completely like it was just foundationally revolutionary for his character in a similar way to him destroying Ganishka was completely fundamentally revolutionary to the entire world of Berserk. And I mean, like, the sheer significance of that is the main thing that I think I wanted to talk about with Griffith's character, because I think that like I'm going to stick on that point for a little longer. I think actually because that's just how like significant it is to Griffith's character, in my opinion. Um, like that is what he the fact that he did that because of the fact that he was lonely and still craving companionship, despite how willing he seemed to throw that away in pursuit of his dreams, and yet him waking up from the dream and realizing how lonely and empty he is. It's just so wonderfully profound how such a character that was destined for the highest of possible heights is like so reduced to the levels of like the depths of a normal man in in the way that he is, and that combination is just absolutely I I I I'm struggling to like come up with the right words to describe just how incredible and revolutionary for him as a character it is. Um, so I think I'm just going to end off the point there because that was honestly the main like point that I wanted to talk about with Griffith because like every other point that we see of him after his reincarnation, he is like slowly just gradually building the blocks to his kingdom in Falconia. Um, and I mean, the concept of him being like um, such a high level and legendary character. Um, the fact that is continued to be emphasized by the creation of Falconia, that he is such a character that he has his own kingdom made, and like that prophecy becomes true, is incredible to see that happen. But in general, there aren't that many like individual character moments for Griffith. That's why I didn't really focus on that. So yeah. Um, that was the other major talking point, and the last talking point I have is not about the story. I mean, it is about the story, but not the actual story element itself or any characters. So, Kentaro Miura, the legendary creator of this um of this greatest work of fiction of all time that I finished consuming today, um, passed away in 2021, uh, around this time of year. Actually, I think it was like what I remember reading May of 2021, so like about 5 years ago. And um, I understand the sadness now. I really do. And the thing that makes that revelation about Griffith hit even harder is the fact that that was like the last uh hand-drawn panel by Mura himself, is that final like panel with Griffith with a tear in his eye at the very end of volume 41. Um and and like that fact, it makes that moment just all the more powerful already when it's already so good. Um uh and I have been aware of this kind of line of thinking slash argument. Even though I haven't actually encountered anyone online who like thinks this way exactly, I'm aware that it exists among some people. There is this sentiment that um uh um I am I'm forgetting his name, but um the fact that Berserk as a story is continuing is upsetting to some people. And like, from what I understand, like some people apparently see it as cash grab because of like because it is continuing after Mira's passing, and like the fact that the story should be um laid to rest with him and stuff like that. And um for this final talking point, I wanted to give my opinion on that now that I have properly finished the story of Berserk myself. And let me tell you, it is one of the biggest loads of horseshit I have ever heard in my entire life. Because even though I am blanking on his name right now, the person who is like supervising the continuing story of Berserk was Mura's lead assistant, and on the whole story for like over a decade. And I think I saw somewhere it was like 15 to 20 years that he helped Mura work on the story, and he was also Mura's closest friend who did not want to let his late friend's story die with him because he felt it was too magnificent of a story to let finish that way, and therefore he wanted to finish it in his late friend's memory. Which, in my opinion, there is nothing cash grabby about that. And I personally think it is an extremely honorable thing that he is doing that. And the stuff that we've already gotten in the Eastern Exile chapter after Mira's death, like these chapters have all been incredible, and I've barely even noticed a difference in the art quality. It is still just like absolutely gorgeous panels because it is still not only him supervising the story, it is still like a lot of the same like studio and artists that helped Mira for many, many years that are still continuing the story. And even if sadly Mira's pen is not the one drawing it, it is still an incredible story that continues to be incredible and will continue to be incredible because of who is at the helm of it. Um, and I just think that and I just think that this idea, and I feel the exact same way about Dragon Ball, by the way. Like people that said that, even though I didn't really see this nearly as much as I have heard with Mira, um, like people saying that even though the Dragon Ball Super manga has depressingly not continued since his passing, like maybe that's why I haven't seen any of this, but like anyone that says that Dragon Ball Super shouldn't continue because Toriyama is passed away, like they are an idiot. Like I made a video 2 years ago when Toriyama passed away and how much I love Dragon Ball. And and but just because of that, I don't think that like the story should stop with Toriyama. I do believe that Toyotaro has full rights to finish it, considering he worked with Toriyama for a long ass time. And the exact same thing is true, even more so true with Berserk, because of the fact that like his best friend and supervisor of the story now worked with Kentaro Miura for such a long time. Um, and I have full faith that he will continue the story um honorably in Miura's memory because he has already been doing an incredible job of that. Um, and yeah, those are all of my Berserk talking points. As I predicted, this is indeed a very long video. Um, uh, and yeah, um, I really cannot probably put into words like how special this is to me because Berserk is now my new favorite piece of fiction. And considering how long Attack on Titan has held that title, like for several years, like it is still a pretty close number two. I'm gonna be completely honest about that. It's still at a honestly very close number two spot. The fact that Berserk has dethroned it, like I cannot put into words besides repeating that point how special Berserk is to me. Um, if you have some for some reason watched this video without having finished Berserk, then I truly do not understand what you're doing, but thank you for watching the video. I hope hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you have not read Berserk, again, why would you watch this video? But um if you have not, then do so. Because like it is truly the greatest work of fiction ever made. I am solidly of that opinion, despite the fact that Attack on Titan is still a pretty close number two spot. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, even if you watched a little bit of this very long video, and I will see you later. Bye bye.